If someone were to say the words Saints Row to you, no doubt for many, it'd conjure up images of giant killer soda cans, violent digital toilets, or kicking a dick in the head. But for those that played the first Saints Row, they'll more than likely think of discount Grand Theft Auto. But did this franchise really have to reinvent itself before receiving praise and admiration? Or did the original game in the franchise already earn the respect the series deserved? With the new reboot hitting store shelves later this year, I can't think of a better time to put on your appropriately coloured gang clothing and dive into 2006's Saints Row.
Don't you fuck!
Despite obviously trying to ride on GTA San Andreas' trailblazing coattails, the first Saints Row feels much closer to a more immature bully, which was always going to be the case considering the huge difference in budgets. Even so, it still feels like Saints Row is desperately trying to prove its edginess is bigger and longer than GTA's. Grand Theft Auto has ambulance side missions, Saints Row has you killing pimps and snatching hoes. San Andreas features a girlfriend mechanic, Saints Row has you completing escort missions. That's the illegal kind, not the video game kind. The GTA SA comparisons just don't stop coming. Turf wars, recruiting gang members, earning respect, getting busted by the police, robbing shops instead of houses, spray painting over gang tags, scaring folks by driving super fast. The list goes on and on. The point is, everything that makes up Saints Row's fundamental DNA is in some way built off of GTA's success. It doesn't even keep its imitation confined to San Andreas either. Missions like McManus Says Hello, where you're tasked with sniping enemies on a ship from a nearby rooftop, are clearly inspired by GTA 3's Bomb to Base mission, except in classic Saints Row fashion, it has to go bigger by including rocket launchers. It's really not subtle, but to be fair, it never acted like it was trying to be. And in some cases, that unashamed approach to capturing some of Rockstar's success actually encouraged some neat additions that Saints beat Grand Theft Auto to the punch on. The funniest example I can think of being people flying through their windshields in head-on collisions. But I don't want to let this video devolve into the typical rhetoric of complaining that Saints Row is nothing more than a GTA ripoff. Because, while it 100% is, I don't think it's fair to expect Saints to be on a level with one of gaming's biggest and most adored franchises. From the get-go, Saints does not waste any time letting the player loose into the fictional city of Stillwater. After surviving an indistinct attack from a rival gang, you're quickly given the opportunity to further prove yourself within the illegal organization. At first, this takes the form of simple disruption against the other gangs, but rapidly develops into leading an all-out war against the Saints' three major competitors. And there it is. For all intents and purposes, that is the game. Many other titles have utilized the rising up the ranks technique to give their players a vague sense of progression, yet I don't think I found a weaker version than the one slapped into Saints Row. Each pre-mission cutscene consists of you being told to single-handedly strike a significant blow against whichever enemy is relevant at the time, and that is how the story is maintained from beginning to end. You never really prove yourself to the 3rd Street Saints, because they've already accepted you as their go-to enforcer before you've even picked up the controller. Every single post-mission cutscene reinforces the fact that the writers had no real way to advance the story beyond some crime boss is a bit more pissed now. It doesn't help that each cutscene is also painfully desperate to be adult and edgy, to the point where over 70% of said cutscenes feature either someone getting shot out of the blue, random women performing sex acts, or just our main characters being arseholes for entirely no reason.
Need a light?
Thanks.
Fucking asshole.
I reckon it's fair to say that the immature humour has aged about as poorly as Rockstar's critiques on capitalism.
It's bullshit. Go to college. Then you're gonna rip people off and get paid for it. It's called capitalism.
And sadly, that's not Saints Row's only age-based issue. The game was released approaching 2 decades ago, and it shows. Sluggish driving mechanics, unpleasant UI married with random controller input delays, and an over-reliance on repetitive mission structures don't make it easy to enjoy a nostalgic playthrough in the modern day. Funnily enough though, it actually makes me appreciate the later games in the franchise a whole lot more.
You want some clothes, man?
The map design and gameplay variety in Saints Row 3 alone puts this earlier entry to shame. Not to mention the leaps and bounds the writing quality would eventually make. I didn't realise this until I started playing, but the straightforward inclusion of a fully voiced protagonist should be considered indispensable to the series.
I always thought you were just really friendly and hated pants. Someone gets it.
In this Saints Row, you're just some random mute along for the ride, which does nothing to help eliminate the strange feeling that the game's world is dull and lifeless. From Saints 2 onwards, however, our, more than likely hideous creation is given a voice, allowing them to fully interact with the storyline and even enhance the range of jokes the writers can tell.
You're beautiful.
I'm honestly baffled by how little I appreciated this relatively unassuming addition and how important it is to a traditional Saints Row experience. More than that, however, I appreciate how much the lack of this addition holds the original entry back. The game even proves my point when an unexpected line towards the end of the Vice King's storyline ends up being the best joke in the game.
I'm gonna skull fuck that bitch.
Hope you don't mind hepatitis.
What?
Although unfortunately, the sudden speaking protagonist joke wasn't as funny the second time, and definitely not the third.
That was a hell of an explosion. You okay, player?
I got ran over by a motherfucking truck. What do you think?
Oh, quit being a bitch.
On the flip side, it is fortunate for SR1 that it was blessed with a low-key, phenomenal voice cast. The soon-to-be series regulars Keith David and Daniel Day Kim instantly slotted effortlessly into their respective roles as Julius and Johnny Gat, while the late great Michael Clark Duncan, the fabulous Mila Kunis, and the often strangely but still well cast Michael Rappaport all bring an element of stardom that elevates their characters beyond their stilted facial expressions. Obviously, their casting was an active choice made to stand up against the other big budget games releasing at the time, the game I'm trying not to mention, for example. Regardless of the reason though, it ended up being a good choice, because these respected actors all do their absolute best to dignify the weak-ass script chocked full of crappy one-liners that would barely make a 14-year-old laugh. It also has Lee from Telltale's The Walking Dead, regrettably, saying this.
Ooh, you like it nasty, don't you?
Whoa there, honey. Who said anything about back there?
As far as story presentation, it's extremely bare bones. I'd even go as far as to say that there isn't any. Everything just seems to happen to and around your custom-made protagonist. You know the your custom character in a cutscene meme? This may not be the game that invented it, but it sure as hell mastered it. Except we all should know and accept that that is 100% fair. Anyone that has ever picked up a Saints Row title banking on a comprehensive story filled with drama and intrigue, I mean, come on.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
The predominant motivation for any individual to play a Saints Row video game is to run around being silly as fuck. The majority of said fuckery is often found in the numerous side activities. And this is a conflicting moment for me, because observing Saints Row 1 through the lens of an audience member from 2006, I can see modes like Mayhem and Insurance Fraud being highly hilarious concepts. But with the mindset of some dude on YouTube reviewing the game in 2022, I don't feel unreasonable saying that these activities simply don't pack the same punch as their future counterparts. The original Mayhem's mindless destruction has no chance of holding a candle to Saints Row 4 when the game only seems capable of rendering 2 cars on screen at any one time. I am aware that is a totally unfair expectation to put on a game that had no clue of the technological advancements the gaming world would make over the next decade. But it's a big part of why I struggle to recommend the game to any new players today.
He's out of line, but he's right.
In an attempt to hopefully even out some of those harsh criticisms, I'd like to commend one of the game's primary mechanics, that being the respect meter I mentioned earlier. Unlike that game I definitely will not compare Saints Row to, the respect gauge doesn't indicate how many friendly gang members you can recruit at once. It instead controls how quickly you can progress through the story. Every time the meter is filled, that's one more mission you can play. And if you want to fill up your meter, you'll need to complete one of those many side activities spread across the Stillwater map. And I do appreciate the attempt at trying to integrate the side content with the main storyline in a significant way. And again, maybe in 2006, these activities were considered quality side content. However, looking back, especially with the power of hindsight provided from the later games, I found this inclusion more profusely frustrating. After you've played an activity once, you kinda get the gist, and maybe they stay fun for a few more rounds, but before you know it, they get repetitive. And while similar games would respect your decision to no longer engage with the side content, Saints Row doesn't give you that choice. It's really another prime example of age not being kind to the OG 3rd Street Saints.
Any other comments?
The over-the-top side missions also come with the drawback of further halting Saints Row's ability to portray any type of compelling story. Saints Row treats its world like a cartoon, which on a lucky occasion can provide some genuine nonsensical laughs. But largely, it just had me tuning out of the action. In a world where I can survive a direct hit from an RPG, but not a small drop from a ledge, and my good friend Johnny can get shot in the knee with a shotgun and still amble around the town on 2 feet afterwards, why should I care about anything negative that happens to our characters? It's a trade-off I'm sure Volition were quite aware of. However, it's still a shame it wouldn't be fully doubled down on until an eventual sequel 5 years later. In truth, I still find it strange playing this game, knowing the series will eventually end up featuring violent virtual toilets. I know I said I didn't want to keep likening the game to GTA, but all too often it feels less like those games and more like Crazy Taxi. The vast majority of Saints Row's missions devolve into speedily driving away from seemingly endless enemy cars throwing themselves at you. And so many of those missions can go from 0 to 100 way too fast. You'll be defending an area, and the game periodically only throws 3 to 4 enemies at you for a chunk of the time. Then all of a sudden it's 3 police cars, 4 gang cars, and a helicopter. All I can assume from that was that no effort was put into scaling the difficulty levels whatsoever. It seems needlessly arbitrary, which goes on to make the fact that you'll be forced to replay the entire mission from the start whenever you fail so much more painful. Surely, that fundamentally goes against the game's main aspirations to be a silly fun time to fuck around with. It's hard to be silly and fucking fun when I'm heavily punished every time I'm not in pro gamer mode. The Dinner's Cancelled mission, which features you and fellow gang member Dex trying to destroy a gang leader's plane before it can take off, is the prime example of this. You're supposed to shoot all these enemies with rocket launchers before they can blow up the car you're in. Very logical. But Dex can't fucking drive for shit. So you have to pray the AI gets lucky and gives you a half-decent shot during the section. It was so fucking infuriating to me, to the point I considered scrapping this whole video. That's how much I hate the sudden pointless difficulty spikes, especially in games pretending to be about dicking around. Whew, let's calm down. The AI in general can fairly be described as dog shit. At first, the frequent mission failures due to losing a car I needed to tail or a bus getting stuck on a box were kind of funny. It stopped being funny when the number of stupid mission failures hit double digits. The culmination of this very up and down journey is an abrupt and overall lackluster ending that only serves to show how little Volition cared about its budding crime drama story, which, like I've said, I'm not claiming is a bad thing. I do, however, think it clearly demonstrates the identity crisis that the OG Saints game repeatedly struggled with. Do you craft a new, goofy, and altogether over-the-top pastiche of video games like Grand Theft Auto? Or do you just try to be Grand Theft Auto? Honestly, I find it impressive that this underdog of a knockoff managed to carve out its own legacy the way it eventually did. In an industry desperate to chase the newest trend, I don't know what's more respectable, that Saints Row tried to compete with GTA and all the other budding open-world sandbox games on the market, or that it somehow ultimately found success. Shamefully, I can't say I enjoyed my time through a modern rerun, and I find it hard to decide if that's due to the outdated game design, the lazy 2000s edgy cringe humor, or the generic crime thriller that constantly repeats its own cliched narrative beats. But what I can say is that for all of Saints Row's drawbacks, there's still a simplistic joy to inhabiting its eccentric, over-the-top world. The giant purple dildo and superpowers of the later games might be a more tantalizing prospect, but if you're after a time capsule to a different era, where video games were free to be empty-headed, humble, and above all, experimental, go and play a GTA game.
Are you gonna let him talk about me like that?
Don't worry, baby, I got this.
Thanks for checking out this video, guys. Were you a fan of Saints Row back in the day? Are you looking forward to the reboot? Let us know any and all of your thoughts down in the comments, and if you did want to support the channel even more than you already have, please do feel free to leave a like, or even subscribe for more like this. Plus, if you wanted to financially support new content, the link to our Patreon is in the description. We appreciate all of your support in whatever form it takes. Thanks again for watching, and cheers.